Welcome to the Carousel of Progress. Now, most carousels just go round and round without getting anywhere. But on this one, at every turn, we'll be making progress.
There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, and tomorrow is just a dream away.
We're all healthy and together, and I think we're living in a wonderful time.
Do you really feel that way?
The 80s are a wonderful time.
Now is the time, now is the best time, now is the best time of your life. Life is a prize, live every minute. Open your eyes and watch how you win it.
Well, it sounds pretty good. In fact, that's just the right spirit.
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mangello, and this is show number 244 for the week of October 16th, 2011. As we continue to look back at Walt Disney World's history in honor of its 40th anniversary, I want to take a close look at an attraction which may not have been part of the Magic Kingdom's opening day, but is deeply rooted in its history and sense of nostalgia. While there may always be a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, now is the time, now is the best time to explore the history, legacy, details, and future of Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. Jim Korkis joins me on a segment that's part Wayback Machine, part DSI Disney Scene Investigation, and will leave you with some thought-provoking questions that I encourage you to share your thoughts on. I'll give you more details about this year's annual WDW Radio Epcot Food and Wine Festival Walkabout, taking place next weekend, before sharing a few announcements and playing more of your voicemails at the end of the show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show.
Welcome to Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. Oh, you're in for a real treat. The Carousel of Progress was Walt's own idea from beginning to end. He loved it. He introduced the show at the World's Fair in New York City in 1964, and it was an immediate smash hit. Millions of people came to see it. And since then, the Carousel of Progress has had more performances than any other stage show in the history of American theater. You know, Walt loved the idea of progress, and he loved the American family. And he himself was probably as American as anyone could possibly be. He thought it would be fun to watch the American family go through the 20th century, experiencing all the new wonders as they came. And he put them together in a show called Carousel of Progress, which we are now about to see. Although our Carousel family has experienced a few changes over the years, our show still revolves around the same theme, and that's progress.
With October 1st, 2011 marking the 40th anniversary of Walt Disney World, many of us are getting a bit nostalgic. And on the show, one thing that I want to do is sort of look back at some of those opening day attractions that we've had a chance to explore and examine in depth over the last couple of weeks and months. And moving forward, there's one more that we wanted to hit that really isn't an opening day attraction at all. In fact, it took a number of years before it came to Walt Disney World. But because it's classic, because it's iconic, because of its relationship to Walt, I thought it appropriate that we talk about it when we talk about the history of Walt Disney World. And now is the time, now is the best time. There is a great, big, beautiful Jim Korkis sitting here with me to talk about Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. Jim, welcome back.
Well, Lou, always a pleasure to be on your show. You have some of the, as we were talking earlier, you have some of the greatest listeners in the world. I just absolutely love them. I'm always flattered when some come up and say, you know, I heard you on Lou's podcast. I enjoyed that. And they're all so positive and friendly, and when we were at
Incredibly good looking too.
at Destination D, I had that one listener come up while the two of us were talking, and he goes, "Oh, you're Jim Korkis. I really enjoy your podcast with Lou, but you sound much shorter on the on the radio." And both of us looked at each other and go, "How do you sound shorter on the radio?"
I sound shorter everywhere I go.
But you got a big heart, buddy, a big heart, as I always say. And again, yes, we're sitting right outside Carousel of Progress, one of my favorite attractions. And as you alluded to, it wasn't open on October 1st, 1971. Remember that Walt Disney World, that was considered Phase 1. Phase 2 was going to come 5 years later, roughly about 1975, with the Asian Resort, the Big Thunder Mesa, all of that. And one of the few things that came for Phase 2 was Carousel of Progress, which opened here January 1975 on the exact same day that Space Mountain opened out here. So my understanding is we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the attraction, especially the history out here at Walt Disney World. And of course, because your listeners always enjoy this, we'll talk about some of those special things to see on the attraction today. And then, you and I were discussing what should be done with the Carousel of Progress. So we'll end with that, and hopefully some of the listeners, after listening to this, they might have some ideas as well.
Absolutely. We want to help them appreciate and also understand the attraction as well and its history, not just going back to the World's Fair, but we were talking about before, it's about Walt. And one of the things I love still about this attraction is that it is called Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, because there is a lot of Walt, literally and figuratively, inside the Carousel of Progress.
Absolutely. In fact, this is one of the few attractions where Walt was intimately involved and hands-on right from the initial concept to the final execution. John Hench had gone to see, on Broadway, he'd gone to see the play Our Town by Thornton Wilder, and he recommended to Walt that Walt should see that play. And Walt saw it 3 times in Los Angeles and felt that this would be a great idea to tell the story of electricity for General Electric. A lot of people realize that for Disneyland, Walt had plans for a parallel street to Main Street. At first, it was going to be International Street, very similar to the concept we have at World Showcase at Epcot today. Then it was going to be Liberty Street, very similar to Liberty Square that we have out here at Magic Kingdom. But also, one of his plans was at the end of Main Street, in a little cul-de-sac right off to the right-hand side, was going to be Edison Square. And it was going to be turn of the century, and there'd be a statue of Thomas Edison, and he was hoping General Electric was going to sponsor this. And the main attraction in that area was a 4-theater show called Harnessing the Lightning with Wilbur K. Watt, and K stood for kilowatt. And in each of the stages, you would see how electricity, and specifically General Electric, had changed your life. So in the first theater, it would be 1898, so the turn of the century. A second theater would be 1918. Then the third theater would be 1958. And John Hench actually did up a concept sketch of 3 kids wearing Mickey Mouse ears sitting in front of the TV set watching the Mickey Mouse Club on TV, which you would do in 1958. And then the final scene was 19?8. And the question mark was intentional because it was supposed to be somewhere in the immediate future, but the vague future. And you would be in your house, which was literally an island in the sky. So you could see the stars above you and the stars below you. And the kitchen was self-programmed, very similar to like Monsanto House of the Future. And there were self-propelled serving carts and, big screen TVs and all of this. But of course, in those days, you would walk. So there would be a 3-tiered viewing area, very similar to like the viewing area you have at Stitch's Great Escape, where you're watching them burn the little alien just breaks my heart there. So you'd be on those with the railings, and you would be loaded in, and then the automatic doors would open, and so the crowd would then move into the next stage. That would do, another group would funnel in, and then of course the final thing that you would go to is an exhibit area where you'd see all the new General Electric appliances. And this was Walt's proposal in 1958, and General Electric was interested, but by 1959 they were really more interested in going to the New York World's Fair. So they asked Walt if he had any ideas for that, and so of course it's Wilbur K. Watt. We'll do that. And Claude Coates and Bob Gurr had been working on a revolving stage for General Motors, where they were going to tell the story of dinosaurs, because in the 50s we still associated dinosaurs and oil, so that was going to be it. So they took the idea of a rotating theater, and the rotating theater is really like a giant donut. So the stage is that little empty donut hole in the middle there, but where the audience sits is like a donut, and it's on these steel trucks, which each of the trucks have 36 steel railroad wheels, railroad car wheels. So this thing can hold up to 750,000 pounds in each theater, which is why I feel safe riding this attraction. It then moves you around. Now, the interesting difference, of course, is that for the World's Fair and for Disneyland, the theater moved clockwise, because the final theater you'd go up a speed ramp, and at the World's Fair you would see the Sky Dome Spectacular, which was this huge dome designed by architect Wilton Beckett, and they had sunbursts and electrical storms and all that. And then in California, you went up that speed ramp and you saw Progress City. When it came out here to Florida, you'll notice that the theater rotates counterclockwise, because you don't take a speed ramp up to the second floor to see anything at all.
And that's one of the things I think that we miss, those of us that know that we never saw it but know what that was like. And when I take people through the TTA, Wedway People Mover, call it what you will, Tomorrowland Transit Authority, and you see that model of Progress Land, Progress City, Epcot, I try and explain to people that's not the whole model by a long shot. That's incredibly detailed, but it's a very small portion of what Progress Land, Progress City was back in Disneyland.
Well, and you don't actually realize how small until you think that the original model was 6,900 square feet, for crying out loud. And this is just a little window display out here in Magic Kingdom. And again, you had all of these... this was Walt's design for his Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. And in California, you heard that being said. This is just part of Walt's plan for Florida, whatever. But it wasn't called Epcot out in California because in 1967, when the attraction had been moved from the World's Fair to California, the Disney company wasn't sure they were going to pursue Walt's dream of Epcot. So they hedged their bets and called it Progress City. And they called it Progress City because the General Electric pavilion at the 64-65 World's Fair was Progress Land, because General Electric's motto at the time was, "Progress is our most important product." And that was their motto in the 50s and the 60s. And in fact, some of these, the listeners here might be old enough to remember in the 1960s watching General Electric Theater on Sunday nights with Ronald Reagan as the host. And he would start each episode where they would do a dramatic play each week with, "Progress is our most important product." So that's why it became Progress Land and Progress City. And that big building you see towering up, that was the Cosmopolitan Hotel. And Cosmopolitan, of course, means international. Walt's concept of Epcot was always it was going to be international. And that was going to be huge, and that was going to be the centerpiece for the urban center, and then everything would spoke out from there, and all the lights. And this is just amazing to me. I talked with Imagineer Harriet Burns, before she passed away, and she said, Walt drove us crazy because the model was 1/8 of an inch to a foot, which is really pretty large, but he wanted every single building, whether it was up close where the audience could see or way towards the back or the side, every building inside had to be furnished and lit. So holy cow. And you went up there, and for those who never had that experience, again, I'm a California boy, so as a kid, I loved this attraction because, again, I saw it on Walt talk about it on TV, Walt Disney Goes to the World's Fair. Again, you would be on a 3-tiered level, with the railings, and you would move from one side of the room to the other, and as you did, it was an entire day of Epcot. You started in the morning, and then at the end, you saw night come to Epcot, and the amusement park light up, and you heard narration. You had father and mother talking, and when they talked about the amusement park, they go, now there'll be an amusement park, but it's no Disneyland, but it's clean and it's friendly, and we have a lot of fun there.
Well, and that's, when we talk even about when we do the shows together, we talk about the detail in Walt Disney World. I refer to them as sort of the layers of the onion, the detail that Imagineers sort of follow Walt's footsteps. They put those details that most guests don't see, but if you look hard enough, they're there, like the lights in the windows and the furnishings in the buildings. It was that important to him. It's still that important to a lot of people here at Disney to make those details sort of even be present in the parks as well as things like the model.
Right. And, when we talk about the attraction out here in Florida, I run into an awful lot of people who go, oh, yes, that's exactly the way Walt... And no, it's not. Walt made changes in it when it came from the World's Fair to Disneyland, especially in that final scene. They had to eliminate things that were, really part of progress of the World's Fair, but even within 2-3 years, they were outdated. So by the time it opened in 1967, that final scene now showed, exciting new things like videotape. You could videotape. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Who could ever afford that in your own home? And of course, you looked out the back window and you saw the skyline of Epcot there. When it came out to Florida in 1975, there were even more massive changes because, of course, you also have to update that final scene, but you're updating an awful lot of other things as well. And again, one of the reasons once it came out to Florida, it went through a lot of changes. It got rehabbed in 81, then later in 85 when General Electric stopped sponsorship, and then finally in 93, 94. So things changed over the years. The dog, we were talking about this, that one of the things we like to do on the show here is not just share information, but sort of debunk urban legends. And one of the ones that are going out on the internet is that the dog in the Carousel of Progress is based on Walt's dog. No, the dog that is in there now looks nothing like any dog that Walt ever had in his entire life. However, where that started is if you ever watch the TV show Walt Disney Goes to the World's Fair, and you see the mock-up of the first scene with the father and the dog is a white poodle, which looks very similar to the white poodle that Walt had, that he loved very deeply at that time in his life. And so a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and now they've all become Walt Disney's dogs. And the dog has changed names. In California and at the World's Fair, in the first scene, he's called Rover. In the second scene, he's called Buster. In the third scene, he's called Sport. When it came out here to Florida, in the second scene, he's called Queenie, and I have no idea why that is. Now he's Rover through the entire thing. And, of course, the big question, maybe something we'll discover today, is this dog now the same dog that's over at Pirates of the Caribbean with the keys in the mouth? And, of course, those of you who are listeners, you can take a look, too, and go, gee, the grandma in that first scene, is she the same grandma who's in the Haunted Mansion out here in Florida in the ballroom scene sitting there by the fireplace? Well, anyway, the dog was Walt's idea, And one of the Imagineers told me that, he got woken up late at night because Walt never slept. And Walt said, the attraction just needs a weenie. And the guy had no idea what Walt was talking about, and he thought the weenie is, it's like the castle, right? And no, what Walt meant was the weenie was something that would attract people's attention, but also have a lot of joy and all of that. And so Walt added in the dog to there. Walt added dialogue for all of the characters. The original design for Cousin Orville was the bathtub was facing the audience, and you couldn't see Orville's toes. You'd see his knees, and he was reading a regular newspaper, and then no privacy at all. He would lift the newspaper to cover his face. Walt said, no. And he went and he literally moved the bathtub so now it's parallel to the edge of the stage. And Walt took off his shoes and socks and got into the bathtub and stuck his toes up there and said, "This is how the toes are going to go. You know, we're gonna wiggle this way so that people can see this." And Walt came up with the idea of, let's have him read the Police Gazette. Because that was sort of like a more racy version of National Enquirer today, but it told an awful lot about the characters. So the way that Orville is positioned today and how he wiggles his toes and even how he delivers his line, all of that came from Walt. And of course we all know that the voice, no privacy at all in this place, is Mel Blanc. And a lot of people also forget that Mel also did the voice of the parrot in the first scene. Progress! And even Mel liked to tell the story that was the only voice he did for Disney, and of course, that is not true. That's why you can't always believe even the people who were there, because in 1940, Mel Blanc was hired to do the voice of Gideon the cat in Pinocchio. And he came in and he did all the lines and all that. And then, as they were going through the scenes, they decided they were going to make Gideon mute, like Dopey in Snow White. So they removed everything except a single hiccup, which is repeated 3 times in the movie. And Mel Blanc, in the old days, was very proud of saying it was the most expensive hiccup in the world and tried to get it into the Guinness Book of World Records for that to happen. But Walt's hand was involved with every single thing, partly because he lived through this time period. And by the time you get to the 60s, it's Walt's vision of the 60s. And the whole core of the Carousel of Progress comes from Walt's belief in the importance of the family, in the marvels of technology, and especially American industry, to make our lives better. And the overall optimism that the future is going to be good. Progress is something to be embraced. It's not something to be afraid of. And the Sherman Brothers, especially Richard Sherman, always like to say, when we wrote the song Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, we actually started the song by doing the lyrics, Walt had a dream, and that's the start. And they said what we tried to capture in that song was Walt's optimism. So Walt's fingerprints are on this entire attraction, even though it's gone through lots and lots of changes. You've probably seen a lot of changes in the attraction.
I have, but it goes back to, that's why I said when I introduced the segment, the importance of it still being called Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, because again, like you said, it embodies that idea of family and togetherness. And again, his vision, he was always sort of, he was a futurist that sometimes he was frustrated because the technology could never catch up to his imagination. But he was so very much involved, not only sort of from a philosophical level as to what his beliefs are, but literally being hands-on or toes in to the creation of the attraction itself. And I remember, I grew up with not Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, which, we've talked to Richard Sherman in the past, is one of his favorites, and that was sort of his anthem for Walt. But, for me, now is the time. Now is the best time, because that was sort of the change in what GE's philosophy was. We don't want you to think about tomorrow. We want you to come buy our refrigerator today.
Now is the time. Now is the best time, now is the best time of your life. Life is a prize, live every minute. Open your eyes and watch how you win it. Yesterday's memories may sparkle and gleam. Tomorrow is still but a dream. Right here and now, you've got it made. The world's forward marching and you're in the parade. Now is the time.
You're absolutely correct, Lou. And you know, you see that war between Disney fans. I've met people who that was their only experience, was now is the time, and they are livid that it has gone back to Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. But you're right. What General Electric did is the attraction was out there in California for roughly about 6 years, 67 to 73, and General Electric saw that the attraction was still popular. It was, and again, this is a people sponge. You know, you can get over 200 people into each theater, so you can funnel through well over 3,000, close to 4,000 people an hour. And it's still very popular, but General Electric didn't feel it was getting enough bang for its buck that, for instance, only 8% of the people who visited Disneyland came from east of the Mississippi. You know, 80% usually came from California and the surrounding area. And so they felt, you know, these people aren't being encouraged to go out and buy more GE products. Also, GE had a change in leadership, so they were looking for something. So, yes, they agreed to bring it out here to Florida because they felt, my gosh, this is going to be a huge new customer base for us to bring this in. But the new leadership said, you know, but this song, Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, you're encouraging people to wait, that something better is coming. Walt didn't see it this way. You know, Walt didn't make fun of people that, oh my gosh, in the 1890s scene, look how stupid they are that they're... No, it's like people can be happy at any point in their life with what they've got, but by golly, there's even going to be better things coming. GE didn't see it that way. It's like, yeah, now is the time, now is the best time to buy GE products. And so the Sherman brothers were brought in. And again, it's difficult writing that song. Richard Sherman told me, he said, we were given directions like, you know, it has to be done in 13 and a half seconds, and it has to be adaptable to, you know, turn of the century ragtime and to jazz and to swing. And he said writing the song was very much like being told, here is the shoe, build me a foot that fits into it, you know? and that's how it goes. And so, of course, also the final scene was updated, you know, to show the new General Electric things. And they eliminated some things. At World's Fair in California, the opening prologue, you have the kaleidophonic screens, which were all of these colored lights going in time to the music, which were just amazing.
And as if on cue, over the Tomorrowland Transit Authority, you can hear the background music of Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow.
Beautiful song. Beautiful song. I love the song. I love Now Is the Time, too. I've only heard on YouTube the revision for Interventions out in Disneyland, which uses that Nathan Lane sings as Tom Morrow. I guess there's 5 different sets of lyrics. And again, one of the things that just brought me great joy in 2010 was going to Iron Man 2 and seeing, Howard Stark, Tony Stark, Iron Man's father, as a pseudo Howard Hughes Walt Disney doing Stark Expo 74 and the song, Make Way, Make Way, Make Way for Tomorrow Today, written by Richard M. Sherman, that really captured that feel. Now, of course, they had to redo all of the voices, and Rex Allen, I love Rex Allen. Rex Allen, the Arizona cowboy, a voice of the father at the World's Fair and at in California. Wonderful voice, did a lot of narration for a lot of the Disney live-action animal films. But in between, what he had done is he had gone and done narration for Hanna-Barbera's animated feature, Charlotte's Web. And Disney called him up and said, well, how could you do this? You're Disney. You're family. And Rex Allen said, well, I may be part of the Disney family, but you guys haven't given me work in the last 10 years. I've got a family. So what they did is the father became Andrew Duggan, a very well-respected actor, and he's the one who did the revisions as well in 81 and 85, although in 88 he passed away from cancer. So for the 93-94 revision, they brought in author and humorist Gene Shepard, who wrote and narrated A Christmas Story, which is why I'm surprised there's not a reference to, you'll shoot out your eye with a BB gun for this to happen. But fortunately for the 1993-1994 rehab, they brought back Rex Allen to do the grandfather in the final thing. He just has this wonderful voice. So anyway, bring it out here, and some of the things survived. One of the things for people to take a look at is the robin in the first scene, because that survived from California, that survived from the World's Fair, that survived from Mary Poppins. Harriet Burns had to make that robin for Mary Poppins, when Julie Andrews is singing about the robins feathering their nest and all that. That's an audio animatronic. And Walt wanted, because they were going to do a close-up, a real robin skin. But robins are federally protected. And Walt actually wrote to Washington to ask if they could shoot a robin so they could have a robin skin. And he never got back any answer. But fortunately, one of the Imagineers saw at a natural history museum that they had some bird skins. And so Walt said, go get those bird skins, no matter how many free tickets to Disneyland it costs. And that's it. They traded free Disneyland tickets for these robin skins. And the robin skins were packed in arsenic, and Harriet Burns said the label on them was 1893. So they had been around for quite a while. And she said, so in the 1890s scene, it's very funny, the robin is really from 1893 there doing that. One of the things that I wish they would change is I wish they would take a look at maintenance, because the figures, there's 32 of them. The figures are run by hydraulic fluid. A lot of the audio animatronics out at Walt Disney World now are run by air and water because it's more environmentally friendly. But hydraulic fluid is still used because it really does the heavy lifting. Water and air just can't lift some of that weight. And so what happens over time is hydraulic fluid will leak. So if you'll take a look at, for instance, sometimes the necks look a little stiff in here and all of that, the skins need to be changed. Just like the robin is okay. The robin was an arsenic. But these other skins, they need to be changed. And, even out here in Florida, things have changed all the time. When it first came out here, that scene with a rumpus room, and I don't know how many people know what a rumpus room is. A rumpus room is where you created a rumpus, literally. That was a family room where you could do that. In the original version in 75, it's Mother who came up with the paint stirrer using the mixer. And that's supposed to show how creative she is. Well, nowadays, that's sexist, how stupid Mother is. So now it's Father who's come up with that, because, of course, the philosophy now in TV sitcoms and all this is Father is an idiot. It's not Father knows best, so you go with that. One of the things that we'll see in the version today is it's no longer Cousin Orville, it's Uncle Orville. I have no clue why that happens. They've changed some of the names. Jane was the daughter. One of the scenes that people never saw out here, but only saw in California, was Jane was sitting out on a front porch with her boyfriend, and Mother turns on the electric lights, on the porch to say, Jane, it's time to come on. That's not here. Also, there's no scene out here where in the 1890s the sun was vacuuming, one boy power vacuum. All of those gone. Names changed. The sun didn't get a name until it came out here to Florida, because the sun had no lines in the World's Fair or in California, so there's no need for a name. Now he's Jim, and the daughter has changed from Jane to Patty or Patricia or Trish.
So as long as we're talking about the family and this family unit that goes through all these changes, maybe you can answer a question for me as we're looking at, and there's such great details, like you said, like the robin and some names and some other things we can point out along the way. But in the first scene, in the vignette on the left-hand side, when you see Mother, there's a little girl who's helping her there, and it's not Patricia because Patricia's on the other side. Who is the missing sister, and what happened to her? Is it the sister we don't talk about? Has she not been paroled as yet?
The sister has grown up is the official Disney spin on that. And who is it for me to disagree? Originally, it was the son doing that, but then when the son got moved over to another scene, they replaced it with a young sister. And so they play fast and loose because, again, Disney has always been ambiguous about, are we seeing the same family surviving through roughly 100 years, or are these different families but they're similar, and that was one of the reasons for dogs being called different names and different breeds, because dog's gone now, and again, at the Disneyland version, also World's Fair, Grandma and Grandpa were not in the final scene. In fact, the mother says Grandpa and Grandma are not with us anymore. They're in a retirement community, and our son and daughter aren't here because they're picking them up at the jet point, and Grandpa's in his 80s. That's his golf score. So it wasn't out here until Grandpa and Grandma and the original voice for Grandpa out here was James Gregory, who was Lieutenant Luger on Barney Miller and a bunch of other things. Once you hear the voice or you look it up on IMDb, you'll go, oh, yeah. But it wasn't until it was out here in Florida that the entire family was together out there in that final scene. But, and Lou is such a stinker. You think he's the nicest guy in the world. And he is. But as we were sitting down, he says, yeah, I've got a question to ask you, but I'm not going to ask you until we're on the air. Let's see. Are you smarter than Jim Cork?
No, because I never knew the answer. And I said, what? I noticed this a while ago. I said, what happened to this missing sister? It really is the sister that we don't talk about. And the same thing, too, is it that same family that just ages really, really well? Even when you saw them again in Horizons, Grandma and Grandpa still looking pretty good for being 150 years old. Or is it sort of this representation of a family and just how they're depicted in different times over the years?
And we can certainly start a lot of urban legends right today on this podcast. And what you mentioned was exactly true. Imagineer George McGinnis, who worked on Horizons, said, yes, that's supposed to be an extension of this family. And in fact, that's why General Electric pulled out in 1985 their sponsorship of Carousel of Progress, because by that time Epcot had opened and Horizons had opened. And that's why in Horizons you still have that little clip of Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow as the song. It's supposed to be the same family, and again, they're introducing the future. Walt's feeling was you didn't want to introduce the concept of death in the future. You just avoid that.
Except in Mr. Toad. It's okay to get hit by a train.
Yes, the only attraction, only Disney attraction where you go to hell and people still come out smiling, And again, the whole point of Mr. Toad was Walt's storytelling is that stories have consequences. So if you drive like an idiot, that's what's going to happen. And so that was the natural conclusion. Nothing else, it made sense that, that's what's going to happen if you keep doing this, So for Walt, this was all, this is true. No, I thought one of the things you were going to ask is, we have an Imagineer, Kim Irvine, related to Richard Irvine, who was the president of Imagineering, when Walt Disney World opened. And she came in and posed for the daughter. Although the face is not hers, the face is a combination of different teenage faces that Blaine Gibson had come in and model. All of the female arms are Harriet Burns. Harriet Burns literally shaved her arms to make the moldings, and she told me, she said, you don't realize all the little hairs on your arms until they're gone, and then they're growing back in, and it's the most awkward thing in the world. The father, by the way, was modeled after an actor by the name of Preston Hansen. who did an awful lot of work and in fact had a long career. You know, was in things like Dallas and A-Team and all of that as a B-movie actor. And he came in and they did a casting of his face, and they came in and took photos, and he posed for Blaine Gibson. And all of that, and he looks a lot like Walt. He does. I wonder if that was why he was cast. It's interesting. He never did a Disney film, but that's a little thing. And as long as we're telling people things to look at, you know, even though General Electric pulled out, it's still in the attraction. Take a look in the second scene, and you see the Hot Point oven. Hot Point by the 20s was part of General Electric. It had been a separate company, and then General Electric bought it out. And in the third scene, the refrigerator is General Electric. And why do these things do this? Because we bring good things to life.
Is the vacuum cleaner still, the red vacuum cleaner still a GE vacuum cleaner too?
Yes. So you've got all those little. GE is getting has been getting free publicity since 1985.
Well, and you were talking about, you know, some of the names that are lost because, you know, the names of Rexall. Most people wouldn't know unless maybe we talk about them, and that's why I love sort of letting people sort of listen for things and look for things as well too. And I always talk about how, you know, people that work on attractions and they're not really credited. You know, Disney honors people by giving them a window on Main Street. They may get a tombstone in over in the Haunted Mansion, and there's very few exceptions other than maybe the Castle Mosaic. But sometimes, like here, they do recognize and they do sort of honor, maybe pay subtle tribute to a couple of Imagineers, like a Marty Sklar, whose name you could see in the final scene, and Herb Ryman too, right?
Absolutely. And you know, to give credit where credit is due, Marty Sklar was the primary writer for this, but Larry Clemens was involved. He was a very good writer at the studio at the time, worked on the animated version of Robin Hood, but also intros for Walt for the TV series and all of that. Mark Davis worked on some of the vignette sketches. So did Sam McKim. Sam McKim actually hand-painted the Niagara fan, and it's the same one from California. So that and he did it so it was a souvenir of the time period. John Hench, of course, did some design work in here. Claude Coates as well. But again, the Disney organization, Walt's philosophy is we're all doing this together. He said, I'm not even Disney anymore. You know, Disney is this something over and above what I am. And so everybody did this and loved having the opportunity to work on that. And Walt, of course, what a sly guy. You know, he did the World's Fair attractions not just because he wanted to be exposed to an East Coast audience, because people kept saying Disney type of theme park entertainment wouldn't fly on the East Coast. And he didn't just do this to utilize his staff, you know, to put them to work. Basically, General Electric was paying the research and the development for audio animatronics, for crying out loud. The state of Illinois it was as well, for Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. And then Walt had all of these attractions. He could move back to Disneyland. That was in the contract. You know, Marty had to convince General Electric to sponsor it in California, and he pointed out that within the first year at the World's Fair, 7 million people rode the attraction. 15 million people in the 2 years it was at the World's Fair. In the 6 years it was at Disneyland, over 31 million people rode Carousel of Progress. You know, it's just fun, you know, and even with all the changes that have been made, you get that, you get that Walt feeling. And one of the things that you pointed at the end there is, yes, on the bulletin board on that last scene, you know, posted up on the bulletin board, it says Marty called, wants changes, you know, and gosh, what a wonderful springboard, because we were talking about changes, right?
Marty may not be the only one that wants changes. I mean, look, when we talk about the Carousel of Progress, rarely do you see the line sort of snaking through Tomorrowland. It is sort of set off back here, and you know, it's in a day and age where A lot of kids want more exciting things. They want more interactive kind of things. And over the years, the Carousel of Progress became a seasonal attraction, which is usually the death knell. Usually when something is seasonal, it means come in and see it as fast as you can. From what I said, John Lasseter came to do just that because he was afraid that it was going away. There's been a long-standing rumor that because of its connection to Walt, there's this sort of unwritten belief that there should always be a Carousel of Progress here. There should always be Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. But you talked about the attendance. You talked about maybe some maintenance issues. A lot of people talk about that final scene. And although I will tell you, I have a 6 and an 8 going on 38-year-old old soul children, they've come in and they enjoy this attraction and they have a lot of fun with it and they enjoy the music. But for years we've been talking about what's next, what needs to be changed, what should happen to the Carousel of Progress. And as we were talking sort of offline before we started, you basically enumerated sort of those 4 different options. Let's kind of hit them one by one because I think this will be an interesting discussion, not only for us, but I certainly want the people who are listening to come by the show notes at WDWradio.com and leave their comments as well, especially because of the history and the nostalgia and the ties to Walt for this attraction. So one of the options to do with Carousel of Progress is what?
And again, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for listeners to get involved, and I'm looking forward to them doing that. Oftentimes I hear, "Oh, Jim, you know everything." I don't. I know enough to know how much I don't know. And also, I always love getting different perspectives, because, again, I grew up seeing this in California, so I'm seeing it through different eyes. And so we talked about options. Now, the first option, of course, is one that has been talked about for years. And what you alluded to is in year 2000, they were talking about closing the attraction. And John Lasseter made a special trip to come out and see the show because he thought it was the last time he would ever see this show. And here we are in 2011, right? So the first option, of course, is, my gosh, let's just put it out of its misery. No, we're not doing any maintenance, but by gosh, there's still labor costs, there's still overhead for electricity, things like this. Yes, we're not seeing the traffic in there that we're seeing at other attractions. Let's just close it and say, you had a nice run, but there were other things that were here that were just as good, and they're gone now. And Walt, as part of Walt's belief in progress, we're moving on to the next thing. So what do you think about that? Close the attraction.
So Walt Disney said, and Marty Sklar has articulated over through the years, that they never set out to build a museum, and sometimes it is time for attractions to close, even if they seem like they're popular. There may be various reasons. Many of us lament the passing of Mr. Toad and 20,000 Leagues and Horizons, but maybe those weren't the most popular attractions at the time. We're sitting here right out at the exit of Carousel of Progress, and as we've been talking, I've been watching people come out. And the Magic Kingdom is not crowded today, but as each theater door opens, there is a good-sized crowd that comes out. So I think that, and I know it was just a euphemism, you say put it out of its misery. I don't think it is that it's such a condition that it's irreparable, it's unattractive, it doesn't hold an enjoyable, educational, fun time for guests that come in here. So for me, closing the attraction, sort of literally shutting the doors, and knocking everything down inside and gutting it and putting in a, Chick-fil-A is not something that I hope would be an option. I think there are, if you don't like it the way it is now, and again, you can turn around and sort of watch the reactions of the people
of all ages,
right? And they're a good sized crowd, and that's the thing too, Jim, is that this is one of those attractions that again Walt set out to build. He wanted a place and things that families can have fun together. So the little kid, the grandma, the person who may have some mobility issues, they can all enjoy this attraction together. It's air conditioned if that's your thing. If you want to take a nap, that shouldn't be why you go and see it. But
it's not bumpy. It's not jerky like all the new thrill rides.
Everybody can enjoy it.
In fact, I'm even worried about the Snow White mine train. Everybody's excited about that. I'm excited, but in terms of seeing that minecart wiggle from side to side as well as going forward, I know that I have a nephew who's going to be concerned about that. If my parents were still alive, they would be concerned about that. This is an attraction that everybody can go on. On October 1st, I made a point of coming here to visit this. There was a little girl sitting in the first row, came up to about the size of my knee, and she was just delighted at the dog. She didn't care about anything else that was going on. Oh my gosh, jumping up and down. But from a business standpoint, that's one of the reasons Skyway closed down. They said, what it's taking us to maintain this ride is the same amount of labor and effort that it would on an e-ticket ride. Now, another option, of course, is, well, let's just leave it alone. Nothing to see here. Move on. And so for folks like you and I, maybe some of the people who are listening, it'll be just that little hidden treasure, to get out of the way. Disney, just forget that it's here. Go on and do Avatar Land and whatever. Just let us have this and let it alone. That could be an option.
And see, and you're right. You could just, as it has been. Again, 2000, they thought it was closing. 11 years later, it hasn't really. They've changed the carpets. They've changed the seating a number of years ago, which obviously meant that if they're going to invest that time and the money to do that, they plan on keeping this attraction open in some form or fashion. And I don't think it's almost the, ignore that big dome in the corner kind of thing, move on to Space Mountain, because I'm watching the crowds sort of funnel out of here, and I still see that it is popular. So I think it's popular for those of us who are nostalgics. It's certainly popular for those who have never been. Remember, we take things for granted. There's still a lot of people here, like that family over there with the two kids. This is their first time at Walt Disney World. Mm-hmm. So for them, this is a novel attraction. It is not the high-speed, 3D thrill kind of thing, but I think they will appreciate it for what it is. It's that simple, family-friendly kind of attraction that everybody can enjoy. And
I agree with that too. With all the changes that I would like to make, and we'll talk about that because I'm going to save those for my final two options here. I feel that this show still works as a show. I think it still has that storytelling core that Walt put in there. And I know later we're going to even go see the Tiki Room, and I think the Tiki Room probably works as well because, again, it still has that core, that belief of the family, that belief of optimism, that belief in technology. And for me, that still works. So I feel that this actually brings a heart to Tomorrowland. I don't see anything else here in Tomorrowland that I would consider the heart, of that. Other things that are important, other things that are great, but I think this is the heart and that glimpse of Walt's future. Okay, a third option.
Oh, wait, just real quick.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Tiki Room, and I think that's a good parallel because it's not high tech, it's not sexy, it's very, very simple. The music that's in there now is certainly not, no kid is going to come in there and recognize that music, but my mom will go in and say, oh, I remember that. And I've gone in there with people say, oh, I remember that from this show, that show, whatever it is when I was a kid. That too is Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. And I think because of their connection to Walt, I think that makes them important attractions to stay here. So go ahead, option number 3.
Yeah, well, and when we do the podcast on Orange Bird and Tiki Room, which we're going to go, we can go through that. Maybe there should be an attraction in every land that is Walt Disney's attraction. So Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress here in Tomorrowland and Walt Disney's Tiki Room in Adventureland. Maybe there should be Walt Disney's Mark Twain. Maybe there should be Walt Disney's, whatever.
If this isn't it, what attraction in the Magic Kingdom for you is Walt's attraction? It sort of embodies the spirit, the belief, the technology, his hands in it.
What do you think? The trains! Walt Disney's trains! Come on! And maybe the second one, maybe the steamboat, but trains, and the going back into time and the being able to take a journey somewhere new and explore. The trains still work for me. Okay.
I thought you were going to say Stitch's Great Escape, but go ahead, move on.
Well, now, I'm sure there's people in Disney marketing and Synergy and brand, all of whom I love dearly, are probably thinking, is there some way we can make Stitch, Walt loved mischief, and so that's... No, okay, third option, let's bring in an entirely new attraction. Now, obviously, we can't bring in America Sings. I loved America Sings. Actually, if I was going to bring America Sings to Florida, I'd put it in Liberty Square, the history of America through music. But maybe there's a different attraction. Certainly not Interventions that went into Disneyland. And when they put Interventions in, they actually ruined the rotation of the stage. So a lot would have to happen for that stage to rotate again. But come up with an entirely new attraction. You know, one of the things that they were discussing at Disneyland was George Lucas was going to take over the Carousel Theater. There was going to be a crashed space saucer, and basically you would go in and you see these performers from other worlds who are performing for you. They're on their way to a gig. They're performing, waiting for their saucer to get fixed. And so there's all sorts of options. You know, could there be a Buzz Lightyear storyline here? You know, this is a wonderful concept of that moving theater. It was really something innovative. I come from a theater background, as you know, really something innovative. Maybe it's time for a whole brand new show for the theater.
So you don't see necessarily gutted high-tech attraction. You want to keep that sort of multiple theater spinning around the donut hole, as it were. Does it need to be something that's based off of a franchise? Is it waiting for the next big franchise? Or can it be something that sort of stands on its own? Does it have to be tied to Toy Story or The Incredibles or whatever, maybe coming next down the pipeline?
Well, of course, you tie it to Avatar, and you can use 3D screens, and you got people sitting there. So, my gosh, and no. I don't think it has to be tied to a franchise. I always like when Disney takes something, but no, I don't think they have to look through and go, oh, well, Walt did Moon Pilot in the 60s. We're going to theme it to Moon Pilot. Who cares? The Cat from Outer Space. No, they could come up with something completely new, Maybe it's Sunny Eclipse, maybe whatever, but keep the theater, but change the show. We've changed out shows, but kept the theater. And I say we, I'm using the Disney we here. Disney has kept theaters, but changed out the shows, and that has improved. Sometimes it hasn't worked, changing the show. Okay, fourth option. This is fourth option, and then I'm going to save my fifth option, which is my absolute favorite. But the fourth option is, when the show was originally created, there's a 20-year gap between scenes. So you start at the gay 90s. In fact, Father is holding a newspaper that says 1890, even though in this version they make reference to the St. Louis World's Fair, so that'd be 1904. Okay, and then you jump to the 20s. And in this version out here, they make reference to Lindbergh's Flight and Al Jolson's Jazz Singer, so that's 27, right before the Depression. Good idea. And then you make another 20-year jump into the frantic 40s, and it's obviously towards the end of the 40s, going into the 50s, because again, you're dealing with TV, and the original version of the show, you watched black and white cowboys shoot them out, and so the gag was, when you went into the final scene, you saw a color TV. It was the exact same film strip, but it was in color. And then you jumped 20 years into, the 60s. So at the World's Fair, it was the General Electric medallion home of the future, and then when it went to California, it moved a little further into the late 60s. When it came out here, it was in the 70s, and in 81 they updated it into the 80s. Now it's the turn of the millennium there. So basically, what is happening is you're jumping 20 years, and then that final jump, you're jumping 60 to 70 years. That's a shock to this. What have these people been doing for 60, 70 years? So let's go through and redesign the sets, so now there's only a 40-year jump. So yes, you start at the turn of the century. I think that's a great place to start. And again, since you're not tied to General Electric, you can go into all sorts of other things as well, to show there's other progress other than just electricity. Then you're going to jump the 40 years to the 40s. You're going to jump the 40 years to the 80s, and because there's people around today who remember the 80s. Not a lot, I'll have these wonderful college students come up to me and they'll talk about Disney history, and I'm just so impressed they know. And they turned out they were born in 1991, and I still have clothes in my closet that I bought in 1991 that I wear today. And then the final jump is you jump another 40 years. So again, you're not into the Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon zone, but you're into what Walt always liked, which is the world that's, just around the corner, and Steve Jobs would have been great to create that scene. But so, yes, let's go through and change all of the sets. So now there's a 40-year jump rather than a 20-year jump. That's my fourth option.
So your fourth option seems to encapsulate, and I have no problem with, you can go back and update some of those earlier scenes and do, but it all comes back to the current discussion and dialogue, which is the final scene. The final scene is supposed to be the future, the present, whatever it is. Right now, it's 25, 30 years in the past. But I think you run into the same problem that they ran into here in Tomorrowland, that they run into in Epcot, is that, and I think Walt always ran into this problem too, is that the day that Tomorrowland here opened, it was not about tomorrow. Flight to the Moon was about something that took place 2 years early. The Grand Prix Raceway wasn't all that futuristic, and the Skyway is a technology that had been around. So how do you predict, more importantly, how do you portray the future? If you took something right now and you gutted that final scene, what do you put in there? An iPhone, an iPad, Bluetooth, the wireless technology. But 3 years from now, people go, remember how those iPads, how cute those were? Because it's always, we're never going to be able to keep it updated enough to keep the technology both fresh, but certainly not futuristic, too.
I think you have hit on the key challenge to this attraction. That has always been the key challenge, And in fact, what they did, of course, at Disneyland and what they've done out here is you're going back to a retro future. The future of the pulps, the magazines, and the old science fiction films. And in fact, that's why we've got gears. And people think the gear out in front of Carousel of Progress is, well, that's because there's this big gear that's moving here. No, it's the whole theme of the Tomorrowland here of that almost sort of a steampunk type of look. That's the challenge. That's why I've saved for last my number one option. Those of you listening, I told Lou, you love him dearly, that if he said storm the castle, you would go out and get the torches and you'd be out there today because you love Disney that much. That's one of the things I've seen in Lou's listeners is I see an awful lot of Disney fans who are jaded, who are worried, who have given up hope on things, but that pixie dust is always still in your eyes. This is what Jim Korkis would like to see happen with the Carousel of Progress. Take it back to the absolute original version. And so what you do with that final scene is you take it back to Walt's vision of the 60s. So you have the references to Walt's vision of Epcot. Maybe even the whole house is designed as Walt saw it as Epcot in the 60s. You bring in an artist like Shag or Kevin Kidney and Jody Daly, who I love the work that they do. Absolutely outstanding. And do that retro futuristic 60s. One of the TV series that I absolutely loved growing up as a kid, and I still watch today, is The Avengers with John Steed and Emma Peel. Of course, I'm still in love with Diana Rigg of the 60s, but if you take a look at that, it really isn't Britain. It really isn't UK of the 60s, but it has that whole 60s feel, that image of the 60s. And so what we do is, yes, the other scenes stay the way they are, although, you refresh them, you do the maintenance, you get rid of the dust bunnies on the scrims and watch where, they've started to get a little threadbare and, do that. And bring back Rex Allen's voice. The voice tracks are there. Bring back Rex Allen, as the father, And do that, and so this really then truly becomes Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, because it's capturing that Carousel of Progress that Walt saw in the 60s, Walt's last wonderful vision of progress, a global community, the family together, and spending the time together at Christmas. That's what I want. That's the option I want. And so those of you who are listening and you go, oh, that other option Jim said was the best one, I'm telling you, this is the one we need to go with.
And that might, like you said, that might sort of resolve all the issues. How do you address that final scene that will always be out of date? How do you get back to it being truly Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress? To let it sort of be up there with the train and something that he had such a literal and figurative hand in creating and dreaming about and putting together. The original song is back there. Again, we talked about the Tiki Room going, back to the future, as it were, to that original, and people embracing it once again. I think this is where we want to hear the listener's opinion as to what their ideal option is and what do they think about that. Is that something that, let's sort of play devil's advocate for a second. This is all about making magic, and it's all about pixie dust. It's all about family fun and entertainment, and everybody here is just smiling and have a good time. But it's also about a business. And from a business perspective, would it make sense to spend X amount of dollars in order to do it right, and in order probably a very large sum of money, to take this attraction, multiple scenes, multiple theaters, and bring it back to a more modern day vision of what it looked like in 1964. Because if you do, are you able to justify it? Will that bring in more guests? Because that's what it's going to come down to. You need to, if you're going to spend money, it's obviously to make money. Will bringing that Carousel of Progress sort of back to life, for lack of a better term, will that translate dollar-wise? Will that potentially bring in guests? Do you advertise on TV, on Good Morning America, the new and improved 40-year-old retro Carousel of Progress? And I'm not saying it would or wouldn't. Right. That's me sort of asking that question to the audience.
No, I think that's a valid question, and we always need to realize that when we talk about the Disney business, it's show and it's business, and the business has to be healthy in order for the show to go on. I think that taking it back, you're going to get that initial punch, because again, you've got so many Disney websites now and Disney podcasts. Although I know none of you listen to any other podcast other than Lou's, there are a couple out there besides Lou's. But to get different perspectives, I think that touching into Walt, because I don't think the Disney company has understood how to really touch in as a tribute to their founder. Yes, you've got the partner statue, but basically you're marketing Walt as a piece of product on a T-shirt or things like this. This is the one thing where this is the heart, something you can always point to. You can market it as an alternative to those Rock'em Sock'em rides. I wish we had more stage shows. At Disney, I will tell you, my favorite stage show was the Golden Horseshoe Revue. Long gone. Out here, it was the Diamond Horseshoe Revue. Long gone. Kids of the Kingdom. Used to have a Galaxy Search stage out here. All of these gone. One of the reasons Walt loved this show is that the show was always consistent. The show would always go on. And Walt said in a Canadian broadcasting interview, and nobody's going off for coffee, and I don't have to deal with unions. And when I say bring it back to the original, bring it back to the illusion of the original, because audio animatronics have advanced. That technology has advanced. You can add in those little tweaks, but it can still look like it was in the 60s. And again, I think this is something that every person of every age can enjoy. And there's that huge, long line always out in front of Buzz Lightyear, even with FastPass and all this. This would be that wonderful spillover as well. People are running into this by accident now. People love going and seeing something. I would be interested to see what the figures are of the Tiki Room under original management, whether, numbers have gone up, and whether that's just a curiosity factor or whether people are really going in there because they don't want the jaded cynicism that's out there, those smart aleck, nudge, nudge, wink, wink remarks. They want to feel good. And I think Carousel of Progress would be one of those things that There would be the initial rush because it's new, the initial rush because we're honoring our founder. You know, this is the one place where we're doing it, where the entire family can get together. But I think word of mouth then would start to build on this. And that's how, a lot of attractions at Disneyland especially became popular, was word of mouth, because nobody had any idea, and then they go, oh yes, we went on this and this is it. And as you point out, this is a great place, air conditioning, you get to sit down, something for all ages.
And I think the fact of being a tribute to Walt, the person, honoring his legacy and his vision, is important to us, and I point to you and and I think there's a segment of the population that's probably listening that's important too. But again, playing devil's advocate, because I have to put the money that my parents put to law school to some sort of good use. Do you think that that's important for the everyday guests, that mom and dad that are saving for 3 years to take their 2 kids? Do you think that's something that would drive them or be important to them? Or do you think that if Disney says we've got X amount of dollars, we're going to rehab the Carousel of Progress, or we're going to take that empty spot where the Galaxy Palace Theater once sat, and we're going to put a new attraction in there?
Again, that's always the hard decision, Disney can extend the monorail, but the question that always comes down is the amount of money we're spending. Do we really want to spend it on that, or do we want to spend it on something else? 10 years ago, when I was working for the Disney company, they had a focus group over there at the studios, and they were asked, if we extended the monorail, so for instance, the monorail from the studios to DAC, and then maybe some stops at some of the resorts in between, and then connect that monorail eventually to the Epcot monorail, would you be willing to pay for a transportation pass? And if you were willing to pay for a transportation pass, how much would you be willing to pay, so we can see if any of that would offset, the investment? And people were willing. People were willing to pay for, because that bus travel on property can be a challenge.
And the monorail is not only, it's a great transportation medium, but it's I think for a lot of us, the monorail is still a nostalgic type of attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, at Disneyland, it curved, and Walt was told, well, the monorail is meant for distances, so it should be, it should go straight. And he says people are going to enjoy curving, and they're going to enjoy seeing the other monorail coming the other way. And he was right. He was as always, because he had that instinctual understanding of what people, liked and wanted. And I think some of that still exists in the Carousel of Progress. And I think even the Carousel as it exists today is worth your time, is worth coming to visit. Not everybody agrees with me, but I think if we tweaked it so it really was Walt's Carousel, I think you solve that problem of always having to constantly update it. You have, again, from a business standpoint, yes, you have a lot of upfront cost, but you're not having any back end coming in, which has always been the problem with this.
Yeah, and this is one, like I said, that I certainly want to hear. And look, we've talked for a long time, but we've really sort of only touched on some details and stories and history about the attraction. And I want to know, on the most basic level, is the Carousel of Progress a must-do? When you come to the parks, is it something you do every time? Is it a one and done? Is it if I bring new people? And more importantly, share your opinion. Do you think it should be refurbished? Do you think the final scene should be changed? The whole attraction should be changed? Which one of those options, if any, is most appealing to you?
Maybe you have one of
maybe you have one that we never thought about. But I would love to hear, because I think some of the things that we say and that we talk about now, you never know who may be listening. And I'm sure the Carousel of Progress is on the radar. It is something that Disney's probably always thinking about and wondering what to do next with it. So I think it's an interesting conversation, especially at this time, nearly 40 years after it's been here and having such a long history behind it. But like I said, speaking of great, big, beautiful people, what?
Well, you see, they should be listening to us. Bob Iger, John Lasseter should be saying, we're going to fly out, Lou and Jim for a week. We're going to wine and dine them. We're going to pick their brains, and then we're going to send them away. We're also going to have them sign those non-disclosure contracts, so anything we do, none of them realize.
According to my son, who's 6-year-old, that is exactly what happens, because when he had a chance to meet Ron Schneider, the original Dreamfinder, the other night, we went home, we put on the DVD I made of the original Journey to Imagination, and he looks at me serious as a heart attack, and he goes, "Daddy," and he points to me with his little finger. He said, "The next time you talk to Bob Iger, you tell him to bring back the Dreamfinder." So he goes, "Pinky swear." I said, "Okay, I pinky swear." Yeah. But even the 6-year-olds are a little nostalgic as well too. But there's so much more we could talk about this. There's a lot more that we have to cover as well too. And again, there's so many great stories that only Jim Korkis can tell. If you want to hear more, go back and listen to old episodes. Stay tuned for future episodes. More importantly, go out and buy yourself, buy a friend, and buy Bob Iger a copy of Vault of Walt. I'll put a link to it. You can get that at Amazon. It is a great collection of stories about so many Disney attractions and Walt Disney himself. An incredible book. It is a must-have for any Disney fan's library.
And Lou, as always, thank you for giving me this platform to share some of the stories, share some of the information. And I would also like this time, I always thank you, I'd like to thank the listeners, because so many of them come up and they say, we're trying to save the stories. Those stories that you tell Lou, we try and share them with other people. And I know they are, because I see them popping up, and not one of them go, and Jim Korkis said, it's like, this story. In fact, there was stories that came out about the Roy statue that even came out officially from Disney, that I know Disney didn't have that information. The only way they could have got it was from listening to me talking to you on the show and saying, Blaine Gibson told me such and such, and there it is. And in fact, a couple of your listeners come up and say, we're trying to save those stories. We're trying to go around and talk to people in the parks today. We're trying to talk to our parents. We're trying to look through old things that we have. And that's what is so important, because it's in danger of disappearing. And again, what a perfect time for Bob Iger. What a wonderful legacy for him to leave, that he listens to you and I and makes those changes, right?
Well, like I said, we're so grateful for you sharing these stories, and we want the listeners, when they do come here with maybe that new family or a new friend or whatever it might be, bring them to the Carousel of Progress, make them understand the legacy. Watch that pre-show video of Walt and the Sherman Brothers and explain to them why this attraction is so important, and some of the history and the stories and the details behind it. Also, look for more of Jim's stories behind the stories in Celebrations magazine. We are so honored to have you be a part of our print magazine and all the stuff you do there. So, Jim Korkis from the Vault of Walt, author of the Vault of Walt. Thank you so much.
And not as short as he sounds. I'm not as short as I sound.
He's handsomer than he sounds. I am as short as I appear in the videos. And so maybe we should, you know what? In honor of Walt and Bob Iger's continuing legacy, we should go and experience the Carousel of Progress together.
Because there's always something new to see. Every time I come, I see something new. And what a wonderful way of experiencing with Lou Mongello. Thank you all. Thank you again, Lou. And we've got to do some more podcasts, buddy.
Absolutely.
Just a dream away. So there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, just a dream away.
There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, just a dream away.
Well, it sounds pretty good. In fact, that's just the right spirit.
That's going to do it for this week's show. Thanks so much for taking the time and tuning in this and every week. Don't forget that I want the show to be interactive, so I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Carousel of Progress and its future. Please come by the website at WDWRadio.com. Click on the podcast for show number 244. There you can leave your comments about your thoughts and maybe some suggestions you might have. While you're there, be sure to explore the rest of the site, our daily blog posts and new contests, discussion forums, and lots more. While you're there, you'll also find a link over to podcastawards.com. Thanks to your support and your friendship, you have nominated WDW Radio for a Best Travel Podcast Award. So I'd ask you to please go by podcastawards.com, vote daily until Thursday, October 27th for WDW Radio in the travel category. That's the bottom right-hand corner of the page. Be sure and use a valid email address, as your vote will be verified by an email that's sent to you from podcastawards.com. Also, in keeping with the idea of making the show interactive, you know I love hearing from you. So if you have a question you want answered on the show, you can email me at lou@wdwradio.com or call the voicemail line toll-free at 888-703-2171. In addition to the podcast, also come by our weekly live video broadcast and chat every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern at wdwnewscast.com. There we'll talk about this week's Walt Disney World and give you a chance to engage and discuss, ask and answer questions real time in the chat room. If you can't make it live, that's okay. It's available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/WDW Radio, on the WDW Radio blog where you can leave your comments, and you can also get the audio-only portion of the newscast every week in iTunes as well. I also always want to invite you to come by and join the WDW Radio family. Be part of the community. You can meet other Disney fans on our discussion forums at WDWRadio.com, or better yet, in person at our WDW Radio Meets of the Month and at other events like our WDW Radio Cruise on the Disney Dream, which is taking place in November 2012. Go check out WDWRadioCruise.com for more information. But speaking of upcoming events, our annual Epcot International Food and Wine Festival Walkabout is coming up next weekend. It's going to be Sunday, October 16th, starting at 11 a.m. You can visit DisneyMeats.com for more information. Also, a little bit of a rough itinerary of where we'll be going throughout the day as we wander the promenade, sampling all the different foods from the different kiosks. We'll be recording it for the show. So please come by, join us for a little or a lot of food as we wander the promenade. Again, DisneyMeats.com is where you can find all the information, as well as on Twitter and Facebook, where, by the way, you can follow me. I am at Lou Mongello, and we are at Facebook.com/WDW Radio. Quick reminder, too, about the Celebrations magazine. Our deluxe limited edition Christmas holiday book is actually at the printers right now. It's going to be a hardbound limited edition book that's going to feature 120 pages of Disney Christmas magic, hundreds of all-new color photos, and new behind-the-scenes stories of the holiday celebrations at Walt Disney World, past and present. It's going to be available in early November for $24.95, but you can pre-order your copy now for the discount price of just $19.95 plus shipping. Again, visit celebrationspress.com for more information or to order. And while you're there, if you've never checked out Celebrations Magazine before, we now have a free downloadable PDF sample version to give you a sense of kind of what's going on inside every issue. Visit celebrationspress.com to download again. That is completely free for you. Big thanks to our partners and sponsors, including my official and recommended travel provider, whether you're going to Disney World, Land, Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, or anything in between. Becky and her team of agents give you the best possible service, all possible discounts, an amazing level of personal service, and again, it's at no additional cost to you. You can visit them over at mousefantravel.com. If you're looking for maybe a little bit more room, something like a 2-bedroom condo, maybe up to a 7-bedroom home, like the one we had for the 40-hour show just a couple of weeks ago, allstarvacationhomes.com has more than 150 to choose from within just a couple of miles of Walt Disney World. They all have your own private pool, spa, kitchens, game rooms, multiple master bedrooms, lots more. Again, visit them over at allstarvacationhomes.com. But if you want to stay right in the heart of Walt Disney World and take advantage of 17 world-class restaurants and lounges like Blue Zoo and Il Molino, check out the video from last week where we went to the Swan and Dolphin Food and Wine Classic. But if you want to stay there and enjoy the heavenly beds in the Mandara Spa, go and visit swananddolphin.com. As always, my friends, and you are my friends, and I mean that sincerely, if you like the show, all I ask is that you please help spread the word, let others know about it, tweet out that you're listening, share the link on Facebook or Google+, other discussion forums you may be members of, and please come by, go visit iTunes, and review and rate the show and the WDW Radio apps over in iTunes as well. And also, please remember that there's no time like right now to start pursuing your passion and following your dreams. And when you do, always keep moving forward. Thank you again so very much for taking the time out of your week to listen to the show. And so until next time, my friends, have a great week, everybody. See ya.
This is Jamie Robbins Longoria calling from Chicago. Wanted to call and say thank you again for me being one of the 40-hour Box People contest winners. That's so exciting. You have no idea. I was actually in our bathroom that night finishing up Kayla's bath, and I had my laptop in the bathroom with me. That's just how dedicated I am. When I found out that I had won one of the trips, when I saw my name on the chat popping up and up and up and everything, that was just so exciting. I literally started crying, and Kay was like, "Hi, Mommy," and I was like, "Mommy won the trip." And so it was just awesome. I wanted to say congratulations again to my fellow box person winner, John, who is also on the forums with me. So that's just great. And thank you, everyone, for all the well wishes and congratulations for both of us, both in the chat and on the forums. I am just so excited to win the trip. Really means a lot to me. I've been having a really rough year this year, and this is just something that will just help me out and keep motivated to keep, myself positive and working towards bettering my life and stuff like that. So just want to say again thank you to you and Becky. That's just great. And as soon as I figure out my details, I will definitely be letting you guys know. Also, just wanted to say again, the box contest was great for everyone, and the whole 40-hour show was great. I was in the box for most of the time, minus a couple hours here and there. It was just exciting, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was such a great day on the 40th, and then being able to see everything afterwards and the following day. And all the money that was raised also for the Dream Team with the auctions, that's just amazing, $17,000. That's just incredible. That just proves what a great community we have here and what an awesome person you are for starting that up and working so hard to raise money for that great organization. So thank you. And thank you again for everything that you do every week. I've told you before, I love the podcasts, the blogs, the pictures, everything. So just keep up what you're doing, keep up the great job, and I can't wait to meet you, hopefully soon, maybe on my trip next year when we come down. And just keep up the great work. I truly appreciate it, and I know everyone else does too. So for now, that's it, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Hey, howdy, hey, Lou. This is David. David the Eighth Dwarf on the forums. We just got back last week from a trip down to Walt Disney World. We just missed you guys on the 40-hour show. We got down on Sunday, and you were wrapping up. We had tickets for the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, so I had to miss you on that one. Caught you on Saturday online. Saturday morning was great. Had wrapped up our week down at Bay Lake Towers. Had a Magic Kingdom view. It was awesome watching Witches from our balcony. That was just the best. Lou, keep up the great work, and you have a good evening and have a magical day. Thanks, Lou.
Hey, Lou, it's Anthony from St. Louis, down to Walt Disney World for a little food and rain. I was the drunk guy who yelled, "Hey, Lou," as you guys were walking in the back entrance of Epcot yesterday. So kind of a rainy day, kind of a downer, but kind of seeing you brightened our day just a little much. You being such a Disney star and all. Hope your time last night was a good one. Bye.
You've got a friend.